do watercolor, show them how to do watercolor. So I thought I would show you. First of all, I do have a more professional watercolor set, but frankly I like to use Praying. It's one I use when I'm traveling. It's a good brand. It has a white lid, which is helpful when it comes time for mixing colors. The first things I want you to notice about when I draw is that I'm not doing tiny little movements with my hand. A lot of people tend to do this. I don't want you to do that. I think you need to draw with as few stops and lifts of the hand as possible. So I'm just going to start drawing, and you can just kind of watch how I handle the plant. I look at the plant more than I look at my paper. You might want to draw some of the negative space, the space that isn't there. It sometimes is easier than drawing what is. I'm not necessarily going to draw, I'm not a realist anyway, so I'm not going to maybe draw a whole picture of the plant in its pot. I kind of am more interested in sort of picking out the interesting parts and just working in some partial areas instead of the whole thing. The leaves that are closer in front, I'm going to draw a little bit darker. Once the water hits this green crayon is going to turn to its own watercolor, but the things that are closer to the front, I'm going to draw darker, and that will give them a little depth perception. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, front, darker, back, faded. Sometimes when I'm trying to find where I'm at in a drawing, especially when it's something like a lot of leaves and I'm getting a little confused, I actually just sort of feel around the shapes and actually make marks on the paper, trying to figure out where to go next. And I'm not worried about that for one thing. It's water soluble, and the others, even if it wasn't, people don't notice it as much as you think, and it just kind of adds something to the picture anyway. So I just try to find where I'm at. I try to keep my pencil, or in this case the crayon, on the paper as much as possible. Okay, so I've got my basic plant drawn. I'm going to get a round watercolor brush, get some water, tap it off on the paper. I'm just going to put the watercolor right here. And actually put it on the paper. So you can see it. Normally I might not do that, but that way you can see it. I don't ever take it straight out of the pan, for one thing, especially since I'm using a children's watercolor. The color's too harsh, so I'm just going to pick up some old color from what I had on there before. It was a little brown or something. If you're familiar with color mixing, you'll kind of understand what I'm doing. If you're not familiar with it, well, this isn't really a color theory lesson, but you're going to make your different colors through how colors mix. And anyway, I tend to handle a paintbrush like a crayon or a pencil. I like to work with lines, so I don't actually do a lot of, especially when I've set it up like this, I kind of just treat it like, and I also like to, you see how I'm holding back on the end. If you're up here like this, it's gonna be tight, and it's just not gonna be as loose and flowing. Especially with a plant, you kind of want to give it that sense of growth and looseness, and I have less control further out at the end, but at the same time I actually have more in a way, so I want to make sure I use the handle. Excuse me. I have one instructor that said, they give you a handle on the brush, use it. So Don't put your hand down here, put it towards the back. With watercolor, if you're a control freak, you're going to maybe have some moments of panic. I like it when the colors run. I mean, I don't let it do it to the whole thing because then you're just going to have mush, but I don't mind the, I guess you could call them happy accidents of things that I can't control. What I'm trying to do here is carry some, I don't want to just have necessarily one area color in one spot. At the same time, I don't want to have like one color here, one color there. That, you know, I don't want it too balanced because that becomes boring. And so I'm trying to carry this trunk color that I have going on just up here a little bit. All I did was mix a purple and a brown together. And if I want to keep these lines crisp, which I do, I need to let them dry before I get any other color near it, so I'm going to try to work on some other areas. I'm going to mix up a faint green and let my brush stroke, you know, by adding more pressure it widens out and it becomes a larger stroke. I'm just going to let the leaves be one single brush stroke in some areas and not fuss with them too much. Excuse me. A little red over here, so I'm going to add that to the green to dull it up a little bit. So these bottom bluish green color that had dried, so I can go back on the top with this pattern in the leaves that I wanted to kind of get in there. Of course, watercolor is transparent, so you build on color. You don't cover up. You just build upon. So whatever is down there first, you're still going to see. You can keep building your picture like that until it's finished. I don't want to keep going here, but I don't usually just leave them plain. I like to go back on top with some, you know, either a pencil or water soluble something, because I like to draw. I like to include drawing in everything. That's why I don't really call myself a watercolorist. So if, let's say I'd finished and I wanted to go back and add some, you know, put some line work in there, get some delineation back in there. So excuse me. I use colored pencils a lot with watercolor. I guess what I'm trying to go for here is just like a line from up from the pot or into this leaf up. I don't know why, but that's the one I'm looking at, and so anyway. You're going to have to do your style. This is sort of how I would do it. You can do whatever you want, frankly.